My name is Margaret and I am 75 years old. I have lived long enough to know that life can be sweet like honey but also bitter like herbs. I raised my children with love, carried their burdens when they were small, and gave up many of my own dreams so they could have theirs. But never in my wildest imagination did I think that the same son whose wedding I paid $10 million for would one day call me a parasite and turn his back on me. Yes, you heard me right. $10 million. Every coin of it came from my hands, my sweat, my savings, and even from selling a piece of land I had held for decades. That wedding was not just an event. It was like building a palace for a prince. Guests came from every corner of the country, even some from abroad. There were limousines, fireworks, gold-plated cutlery, and a hall that sparkled like the stars in heaven. My son, David, stood there in his tuxedo, looking like a king, while his bride, Emily, wore a gown that flowed like a river of diamonds. And yet, after all that, he looked me in the eye, the same eyes that once begged me for bedtime stories, and called me a parasite. He said I was clinging to him, embarrassing him and draining him of life. Then he walked away. Just like that. No hug. No thank you. Not even a backward glance. When those words hit my ears, my heart felt as if someone had taken a knife and sliced it into tiny pieces. My legs trembled, my chest ached, and for a moment I thought I would fall. The hall was still echoing with laughter and music, but inside me, there was only silence and pain. I am sure you are asking yourself, how could a son treat his mother this way, especially after such a sacrifice? My dear friends, that is the question that still haunts me. But before I tell you the whole story, let me take you back to where it all began, so you can understand how a mother's love can sometimes become the very rope that ties her down. But before I go deeper, I want to know, where are you watching this story from? Are you sitting in your living room in New York? Or maybe on your porch in Texas? Perhaps in your car during a lunch break in California? Wherever you are, know this. What I am about to share is not just my story. It is a story about kindness, sacrifice, betrayal, and the lessons life teaches us when we least expect it. Now, let me introduce the characters in this story, the people who walked into my life and shaped it in ways both beautiful and painful. First, there is me, Margaret. A simple woman, born in Ohio, raised with values of hard work and faith. My parents were farmers, and they taught me that nothing in life comes easy, but everything is possible if you don't give up. Then there is my son, David. My firstborn. The apple of my eye. From the moment I held him in my arms, I swore I would protect him, guide him, and give him the best life possible. He was smart, ambitious, and charming, but also stubborn. Even as a child, when he wanted something, he would not stop until he got it. And then comes Emily, his bride. A beautiful young... The music kept playing that night, but I could no longer hear it. My son's words spun in my head like a hammer striking an anvil. Parasite. That single word echoed louder than the laughter of the guests, louder than the clinking glasses, louder than the band itself. I tried to compose myself, to fix a smile so no one would notice the storm raging inside me. Mothers are good at that, hiding their pain for the sake of their children. I straightened my gown, held my glass of champagne, and nodded politely as guests passed by with cheerful faces. But inside, my heart was breaking into tiny pieces. I slipped out of the ballroom for a while. The night air was cool, and the sound of distant fireworks painted the sky with color. I stood under a tree, away from the noise, and whispered to myself, "Margaret, you gave him everything. Why does he see you this way?" But instead of answers, I found only silence. The calm of the night brought back memories. I remembered little David, no more than 6 years old, running through our back. That night, as I sat in the dark with Emily's words still ringing in my ears, something inside me shifted. For 75 years I had been many things. A daughter, a wife, a mother, a friend, but never had I been told to let go of my own flesh and blood. Felt like being erased from my own life. At 3 a.m, while the rest of the world slept, I walked into my small study. The lamp cast a soft glow on the wooden desk where I used to help David with his homework. I opened an old notebook, the kind I once used for grocery lists and reminders, and I wrote in shaky letters, "I will find out why my son has turned against me." I was no detective, no investigator, but I knew one thing. People don't change overnight. Something or someone had poisoned David's heart. In the quiet of that night, I made a promise to myself. I would not beg. I would not cry to him anymore. Instead, I would uncover the truth. And when I found it, I would decide whether to forgive or to walk away forever. The next day began like any other. Sarah came by with her bright smile and her gentle presence. She noticed the notebook on my table. "What's this, Mom?" she asked. I hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Just a journal. Sometimes when the world is heavy, writing helps." She squeezed my hand. "As long as it doesn't carry you deeper into pain." I nodded, though inside I was determined. For the next few weeks I tried to move quietly, watching, listening. I heard whispers from neighbors, read small things on social media, and pieced together bits of conversations. Everywhere I turned, David's name came up in glamorous ways. His success, his wife's elegance, their grand house. But always, like a shadow hiding behind light, there was a story being told that I was the one who clung, who controlled, who refused to let my son live freely. The more I heard, the more I felt my chest burn with sorrow. I, who had given everything, was now painted as selfish. One morning I decided to go to the city where David and Emily lived. I told Sarah I was visiting an old friend so she wouldn't worry. With my small suitcase and my walking cane I boarded a bus. The city was busy, full of tall buildings, cars honking, and people rushing like ants. I hadn't been there in years, and the noise felt overwhelming. I found their street easily. It was hard to miss. Their house stood tall and proud, with gates that shone black like polished stone. I stood outside for a long time, staring, remembering how much I had sacrificed for him to reach such a life. My son lived like a king, the phone nearly slipped from my hand when I heard Sarah's words. My heart began to pound so loudly I could barely hear myself breathe. David, my David, was in the hospital. I pushed myself up from the cafe chair, my legs trembling. The woman who had warned me about Emily was long gone, but her words still echoed. Dangerous. She knows how to turn people against each other. And now, suddenly, my son was in the hospital. I rushed outside and flagged the first taxi I could find. "Take me to St. Mary's Hospital," I told the driver, my voice shaky. The ride felt endless. Each second dragged like an hour. I stared out the window at the blur of traffic lights, wondering if this was the moment life would punish me further. Would I reach the hospital only to find I had lost my son forever? When I finally arrived, Sarah was waiting in the lobby. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. She hugged me tightly. "Mom, it's bad," she whispered. "What happened?" I demanded, my voice breaking. She took a deep breath. "He collapsed at work. They say it might be exhaustion or stress. They're running tests now. Emily is inside with him." I felt my knees weaken. I wanted to storm into that room, to see him with my own eyes, to touch his forehead like I used to when he was sick as a child. But the nurse at the desk shook her head firmly. "Only immediate family allowed," she said. "I am his family," cried. Emily appeared just then, her designer heels clicking on the floor. She looked immaculate, not a hair out of place, though her face wore a mask of concern. "Margaret," she said coolly, "you shouldn't be here." Froze. "My son is in there. Don't you dare tell me I shouldn't be here." Her lips curled into a polite smile, but her eyes were sharp. "The doctors said stress might be the cause. And, well, you showing up unannounced won't help him. He needs peace, not drama." Her words cut deep. Sarah stepped forward, her fists clenched. "Emily, don't you talk to Mom like that. David is her son too. She has every right to be here." Emily gave Sarah a cold glance but didn't respond. She turned on her heel and walked back toward David's room, leaving the scent of expensive perfume in the air. I sank into a chair, clutching my chest. Sarah rubbed my back gently. "Mom, don't let her get to you," she said. "We'll wait." The hospital doors closed behind me as the guards stood like stone pillars, and I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. Imagine me, a 75-year-old woman who had sacrificed everything, being treated like an intruder in her own son's life. I walked slowly to a bench outside, my cane tapping softly against the floor. My body was weak, but it was my spirit that felt truly broken. I sat there, staring at the busy street, people rushing past me with their own troubles, not knowing that an old woman sat there, shut out from the very child she gave birth to. It would have been easy to give up right there. To go home, close the door and say, "Enough." But a mother's heart doesn't work that way. Love doesn't retire. It doesn't vanish just because the world says you're not needed. So I waited. I waited for hours, watching the doors, hoping to see David, hoping he might step out, even for a second. The sun sank lower and the air grew colder. Nurses walked by, visitors laughed, cars honked, but still I waited. At last, Sarah came out, looking tired but carrying a small smile. "Mom," she said, sitting beside me. "I told David you came. He wanted to see you." But Emily, she wouldn't allow it. My throat tightened. "Did he say anything else?" Sarah nodded softly. "He said, 'Tell Mom I'll come home soon.'" Those words pierced my heart. Hope flickered in me like a candle in the dark. He still thought of me. He still remembered home. "Hold on to that, Mom," Sarah whispered. "He hasn't forgotten you." I held her hand, grateful, but even then, unease lingered. I could feel it in my bones. Emily's grip on him was tightening, and she was not going to let go easily. That night, I returned home exhausted. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. My house was quiet, too quiet. Once upon a time, David's laughter had filled these rooms. He and Sarah had played hide and seek here, their footsteps echoing across the hall. Now the silence was so heavy, it felt like a stranger's house. I tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept turning over the same questions. Why was Emily pushing me away? What was she afraid of? And why did David, even in his weak state, not resist her? The days that followed were calmer but lonely. Sarah visited often, bringing me little updates about David. "He's recovering," she'd say. "He's smiling again." Those updates were my lifeline. I clung to them the way a drowning person clings to driftwood. But the calm was short-lived. One Sunday morning, I was watering the flowers in my garden when a black car pulled up in front of my house. Two men in suits stepped out. They weren't police, and they weren't neighbors. They looked like private security. "Mrs. Margaret Johnson?" one of them asked. I gripped my cane tightly. "Yes." "Who are you?" The man handed me an envelope. "This is from Mr. and Mrs. Johnson." I frowned. "Which Mr. and Mrs. Johnson?" The man looked at me blankly, as if the answer was obvious. "Your son and his wife." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Formal, typed, cold. "Dear Margaret, for the sake of peace and the well-being of our marriage, we kindly request that you give David and me space. Please refrain from visiting our home, his workplace, or any private settings. We appreciate the sacrifices you've made, but it's time." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. My heart pounded as I stared at the glowing screen, the words threatening to burn into my skin. "Stay away, Margaret, or next time you'll regret it." I read it again and again, hoping it was some cruel prank. But the photo, the image of my son, wires and tubes connected to his weak body, was real. Too real. Whoever had sent this knew exactly where he was and wanted to frighten me. My fingers trembled as I placed the phone on the table. Sarah leaned over to look. The color drained from her face. "Mom, who sent this?" "I don't know," I whispered. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. She grabbed the phone, her hands shaking. "We need to take this to the police." But I shook my head. "And say what?" "That someone sent me a threatening message. They'll ask questions I can't answer. They'll say I'm exaggerating. And worst of all, what if it makes things worse for David?" Sarah sank into the chair beside me, her eyes full of fear. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the ticking of the old clock on my wall. Each tick sounded like a warning. Each shadow in the room seemed alive. I kept the phone close, as if the photo might change, as if the words might vanish. But they didn't. By morning I was exhausted. I brewed myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, staring out at the empty street. The world moved on as usual. Neighbors mowing lawns, children riding bikes, but my world had stopped. Still I tried to find strength. I told myself that whoever sent the message wanted me afraid, hidden, silent. And if I gave in, I would be giving them victory. So I dressed, fixed my silver hair, and stepped outside with my cane. My neighbors waved. "Good morning, Margaret." I forced a smile and waved back. For few days life slowed. I tended to my flowers, baked bread, and tried to find comfort in the little things. Sarah visited often, and her laughter helped lighten the weight in my chest. We shared tea, old family stories, and even looked through photo albums. But beneath the calm, a storm was waiting. One afternoon I received another call, this time from an unknown number. My heart raced as I answered. "Hello." First there was silence. Then a woman's voice spoke, soft but cold. "You don't listen well, Margaret." Froze. "Who is this?" "You were told to stay away. If you don't, you'll regret it. This isn't your world anymore. Accept it and disappear." The line went dead. My knees buckled. I grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. It was her. I didn't need proof. I knew in my bones. Emily. But why? Why such hatred for me? Why fear my presence in David's life? That night I sat with Sarah in the kitchen. I told her about the call. Her face turned pale, her fists clenched. "This has gone too far, Mom," she said firmly. "We can't keep quiet. If this is Emily, she's dangerous." The image of Emily walking into that house with another man burned into my mind. I couldn't blink it away. I couldn't pretend it wasn't real. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. "Did you see that, Mom? She's not just smiling at him. She's comfortable with him. Too comfortable." I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. "David doesn't know," I whispered. "He can't." For the next hour we sat in silence, waiting. The sun slipped lower in the sky. Lights flickered on in the house, one window after another. Shadows moved behind the curtains. But no one came out. Finally Sarah sighed. "We should go. It's late." But I shook my head. "Not yet. I need to see more. I need to be sure." My daughter turned to me, her eyes full of worry. "Mom, this could get dangerous." "Dangerous?" I almost laughed, but it came out hollow. "Sarah, I've already lost my son. If I walk away now, I'll lose him forever. I'd rather risk danger than live in the dark." So we stayed. It was close to midnight when the front door finally opened. Emily stepped outside, her hair loose now, her dress slightly wrinkled. She walked the man to his car. Their voices carried faintly in the night air. I strained to hear. "Soon," the man said with a low chuckle. "He won't suspect a thing." Emily's laughter followed, light and cruel. "He's too blind. He still thinks he's in control." They kissed. A long, lingering kiss that left no doubt. Then the man slid into his car and drove off. Emily stood on the porch for a moment, smiling to herself, before slipping back into the house. Sarah covered her mouth, her eyes wide. "Oh my God!" I felt the air leave my lungs. My heart broke for David, for the boy I raised, the boy who once clung to my hand at the park, who trusted me with every secret. He was being played like a pawn in his own home. And worse, someone wanted me out of the picture so I wouldn't discover it. The threatening message. Phone call. It all made sense now. Emily wasn't just pushing me away out of pride. She had something to hide. And she would do anything to keep it hidden. That night, Sarah and I drove back in silence. The city lights blurred in my tear-filled eyes. My hands shook the whole way home. When I finally lay down in bed, the darkness felt heavier than ever. I kept thinking about David, lying weak in that hospital bed, calling me a parasite, pushing me away. If he knew the truth, would. The morning after David's call, I sat in my kitchen staring at the cold cup of tea I'd brewed hours earlier. The steam was gone, but I hadn't touched it. My mind replayed his words. If you love me, stay away. It wasn't him. I knew my son's voice, every tone, every hesitation. This wasn't just weakness, it was fear. Someone was feeding him those words. Sarah paced the room like a restless lioness. Mom, this has gone beyond family drama. Someone is controlling him. That call didn't sound natural. I looked up at her, my eyes heavy with worry. Then who's behind it? Her lips pressed tight. I think it's the man we saw with Emily. He's not just a lover, Mom. He's dangerous. And if David's being kept weak, maybe it's intentional. The thought chilled me to the bone. That afternoon, we drove back near David's mansion. We parked in a side street where we could see the gates. Hours dragged on, the sun sinking behind the rooftops. Then, as twilight fell, the same sleek black car we'd seen before rolled up. The man stepped out again, sharp suit, polished shoes, air of confidence. But this time, another man followed him. Heavier, rougher, with a scar across his cheek. They didn't use the front door. Instead, they slipped around the side of the house. My chest tightened. What business does Emily have with men like that? Sarah grabbed her phone. We need pictures. She snapped quickly, angling through the car window. But just as she clicked the last shot, the scarred man turned his head. His eyes scanned the street, sharp as a hawk's. Duck low. Sarah did too, holding her breath. After a tense minute, the men disappeared into the house. My pulse thundered in my ears. Mom, Sarah whispered. They know we're watching. I'm sure of it. We waited a while longer, then finally drove home. I thought the worst was over for that night. But I was wrong. At midnight, I was woken by a sound. Sharp crack. Like glass breaking. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Another crack followed, this time from the living room. I grabbed my cane and crept down the hallway. The moonlight streamed through the curtains, casting long shadows. My breath caught in my throat as I entered the room. The window was shattered. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of smoke. On the floor lay a brick. Tied to it was a note. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. Last warning. Leave the city, Margaret. Or next time, it won't just be your window. Gasp. My knees nearly gave way. Sarah ran in moments later, her face pale. Mom, what happened? I showed her the note. She pressed her lips together, her eyes blazing with anger. This is it. We're not waiting anymore. Whoever these people are, they want you gone. And they won't stop until you're scared into silence. But if they think you're going to back down, they don't know you at all. Her words lit a fire inside me. Fear battled with fury in my chest. I had given everything for my son, even $10 million for his wedding, even my dignity when he called me a parasite. And now strangers wanted me erased like I was nothing. Not anymore. But as I stared at the shattered glass, a new fear took root. If they could reach me in my home, then how long before they reached David? And what if they already had? The shattered glass from that night still glittered across my living room floor like frozen tears. Even after the window was replaced, the fear remained. I kept the curtains closed, double-locked the doors, and jumped at every sound outside. But one thing burned brighter than fear: anger. I had been silent too long. I had been patient, hoping David would come back to me, hoping Emily would soften. Instead, the threats grew sharper, the danger closer. And if I didn't act soon, I was certain my son would slip away forever, if he hadn't already. Sarah could see it in my eyes. Mom, she said one morning, you're planning something. I didn't deny it. I'm going to her house. To Emily. I need to look her in the eye and hear the truth from her lips. Enough games. Sarah shook her head violently. That's exactly what they want, Mom. They want you vulnerable. They've already broken your window. What do you think they'll do if you show up on their doorstep? I gripped my cane tighter. If I don't, Sarah, I'll lose him. And I can't bury my son alive while he's still breathing. Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. Then I'm coming with you. That afternoon, we drove again to David's mansion. My heart hammered against my ribs as we walked up the long driveway. The hedges were perfectly trimmed, the marble steps spotless. On the outside it was a picture of wealth and beauty. But I knew what shadows hid behind those doors. I lifted my hand and knocked. The door creaked open. Emily stood there, her eyes widening the moment she saw me. For a split second her face cracked, shock, maybe fear. Then she smoothed it over with a tight smile. "Well," she said coolly. "Look who couldn't take a hint." "Emily," I said, my voice steady though my knees trembled. "I need to see my son." She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "He doesn't want to see you. He's made that clear." My jaw clenched. "Did he tell you that, or did you put the words in his mouth?" Her eyes flashed. "Careful, Margaret." Sarah stepped forward, her phone raised. "We know about the man. The one you sneak around with. We saw you." Emily's composure cracked again, just for a heartbeat. Then she let out a sharp laugh. "You think you know everything, don't you? You old women, sticking your noses where they don't belong. Where is David?" I demanded. She leaned closer, her voice dropping low, almost a hiss. "He belongs to me now. You're just noise. And if you don't walk away, you won't live long enough to regret it." Before I could answer, footsteps echoed down the grand staircase inside. A familiar voice, weak but desperate, called out, "Mom!" "David." My heart lurched. I pushed past Emily, my cane clattering on the polished floor. There he was, my son, pale and thin, gripping the railing for balance. His eyes locked onto mine, wide with longing. "David!" I cried, rushing toward him. But before I could reach him, the scar-faced man stepped out from the shadows of the hallway. He blocked my path, his shoulders broad like a wall. His hand slipped into his jacket, and I knew what he was reaching for. Sarah screamed. And in that split second, everything spun out of control. The scar-faced man's hand moved inside his jacket, and my heart nearly stopped. I knew that gesture. I'd seen it in enough movies to understand what he was about to pull out. "Mom!" David's voice cracked through the air, weak but desperate. "Stop! Don't hurt her!" Emily snapped her head toward him, her face twisted with fury. "David, go back upstairs. You're too sick for this." But he didn't listen. He took another shaky step down the stairs, clutching the railing for dear life. His legs trembled, but his eyes blazed with something I hadn't seen in months: defiance. Sarah grabbed my arm, tugging me back toward the door. "Mom, we have to go now." "No," I whispered, my feet rooted to the floor. "Not without him." The scar-faced man finally pulled his hand free. A glint of metal flashed under the chandelier. Yes, a gun. He raised it, steady, aimed directly at me. Time slowed. I thought of David as a boy, running through the park with scraped knees. I thought of him at 16, borrowing my car for his first date. I thought of the $10 million wedding I had poured my heart into, only to be repaid with the word parasite. All of it flashed before me in a single breath. And still I didn't move. "Don't!" David's voice thundered, louder than I thought his frail body could muster. "Put it down." Emily turned to the scarred man, her tone sharp, panicked. "Not here. Not now." The man hesitated, then lowered the gun slightly, but his eyes never left me. Sarah, quick as lightning, raised her phone and snapped a photo. The click of the camera shattered the silence. The man cursed, lunging toward her. Sarah stumbled back, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Run, Sarah!" shouted. But before she could move, David's knees buckled. He collapsed on the staircase, his body slamming against the wooden steps. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. "David!" I screamed. Emily rushed to him, her composure breaking at last. She knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to lift him. "Get him to the room," she barked at the scarred man. "Now!" But David's eyes locked on mine. His lips parted, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, don't let them." The words cut off as the man scooped him up like a rag doll and carried him upstairs. Emily followed, shouting orders. The gun disappeared back into the man's jacket, but the threat lingered in the air like smoke. And then, just like that, they were gone. The house fell silent again, except for my ragged breathing. Sarah grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the door. "Mom, we can't stay. They'll come back." I stumbled outside, my chest heaving, my mind reeling. The night air hit me like ice. My cane trembled in my grip. For the first time, I felt the true depth of the darkness my son was trapped in. He wasn't just sick. He wasn't just distant. He was a prisoner in his own home, surrounded by people who would rather see me dead than let me near him. And now I had proof, Sarah's photo. But would it be enough to save him? Or would it put us all in even greater danger? As we sped away from the mansion, headlights suddenly flared behind us. A black car swerved into the street, tailing us close, too close. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel tight. "Mom," she whispered, terror in her voice. "They're following us." The chase had begun. The black car's headlights cut through the night like twin blades. Sarah gripped the wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. "They're too close," she muttered, her voice shaking. "Drive, Sarah," I cried, clutching the dashboard. "Don't slow down." The car behind us revved louder, its engine growling. It swerved left, then right, trying to box us in. My heart hammered in my chest. Every bump in the road rattled my bones. Every second stretched into eternity. Sarah took a sharp turn down a side street, tires screeching. For a moment, the headlights disappeared. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. But then they reappeared. Closer. Faster. "They're not letting us go," Sarah whispered, panic rising. The road ahead split. One lane led toward the city, the other toward the forest. Without hesitating, Sarah veered into the forest road. Branches whipped against the car, shadows swallowing us whole. "Are you crazy?" gasped. "It's the only way," she shouted. "We'll lose them in the woods." The car behind us followed, its headlights weaving through the trees. The forest road narrowed, twisting like a snake. Sarah fought to keep control, sweat dripping down her face. Then bang. The sound exploded through the night. The rear window shattered, glass raining down. "Bullet." I ducked instinctively, my hands over my head. "Sarah, they're shooting at us." "I know," she yelled, swerving violently to avoid another shot. We barreled deeper into the forest until the road turned into gravel, then dirt. Finally, Sarah spotted a narrow path and cut the lights, jerking the car off-road. We skidded to a stop behind a cluster of trees. The black car roared past, its headlights vanishing into the darkness. For a long moment, the only sound was our heavy breathing. Sarah gripped my hand. We lost them." I trembled all over, but relief flooded through me. For now, we sat in the dark, too afraid to move. My mind raced, replaying David's voice, his desperate words. Don't let them. What didn't he want them to do? What were they hiding from him? Finally, Sarah started the engine again, creeping slowly back toward the city. We reached my house just as dawn broke, the sky painted with streaks of pink and gold. It looked peaceful, but nothing inside me was calm. As soon as we stepped inside, Sarah pulled out her phone. "The photo. We need to look at it again." She swiped through her gallery until the image filled the screen. The scar-faced man, his hand mid-motion, the gun visible. Emily blurred in the background, her face twisted in rage. "This is enough to take to the police," Sarah said firmly. I stared at the photo. My heart whispered doubt. What if they twist it? What if they make it look like we're the intruders? Sarah opened her mouth to argue, but then froze. She zoomed in on the photo, her finger trembling. "Mom, look at this." She enlarged a small detail on the man's wrist. A tattoo. faded but clear enough to see. It wasn't random. It was a crest. Family crest. One I recognized. My breath caught. No, it can't be. Sarah looked at me, her voice barely a whisper. What is it? My hand shook as I touched the screen. That symbol. It's from your father's side. David's father. Your father. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. The scar-faced man wasn't just some hired thug. He was blood.